Hey guys, it's Leading Women Weekly Check-in. Stop what you're doing. Everybody take a deep breath. This is take two for us, okay? You don't know it, but it is. I'm coming to you live from my kitchen. Angela is in her workspace. That's Angela over there. And this is Leading Women. And it's been an exhaustive weekend. Well, actually, we were on Wednesday. So what did we talk about Wednesday?
We didn't
Because we
go
had
on
a
Wednesday.
good chat.
We
No,
did
we
not.
didn't go on
We
Wednesday.
didn't go on Wednesday. Sunday was our last chat. Wednesday we took a break, and we were both. You were making soap, and I was dealing with groceries and clients, and so. But our last discussion was very good
Hmm.
last Sunday, and it's amazing to me how different
This week is.
this week is. And I know
Yeah.
on Wednesday when we were talking, the news stories were Amy Cooper, racist white lady and the
The
burger,
dominoes. The
and
dominoes
then
were
George
falling.
Floyd had just hit. That story had just hit on Tuesday, and I know on
Hmm.
Wednesday I had said, "God, I feel like it's been a week since Monday, and now it feels like it's been a month since Monday."
Right. Because
and
we had a short week because of
of the
Memorial Day.
holiday.
So one of the reasons we didn't
Yeah,
come on Wednesday was because Wednesday came out of nowhere. And we
exactly.
were like, wait, it's Wednesday. We need to be on. Because I remember at 1:30 you were like, are we going? I'm like, I forgot because I was making soap. I had gotten some deliveries in as well. And what a difference a day makes. What a difference a week makes. What a difference. The good thing about it is we are having these check-ins, and if you have a following, an audience, or you're in a following or in an audience, or you're part of an association, an organization, um, tomorrow is going to be. And let's do that. Let's speak today
Yeah,
about
and
how people come back together tomorrow in
mhm,
light of all that's happening. And in our inbox, we started a conversation. We were talking about worse. I want to say worse than us. Worse
mhm,
than us. That the need for worse than us.
mhm,
That's where I am right now because in watching the protest and this was Angela, I have to tell you the first time I had to tell my compadres I'm not protesting.
mm,
And so you got to imagine I'm getting it right,
mhm,
because I was the editor of I20justice.com, which
mhm.
was a justice website that I had alongside Dryer Buzz, and I ended up folding everything I did into Dryer Buzz. So from here to Texas, I was known as the person. If you needed to get the word out about some things, you could go right to her. And if any of you caught my lives, there were a couple people jumping on that I've been saying hello to,
Mhm.
and I know they were like looking in to see if is she just over there making lemonade? Is she just over there making soap? We
Right.
need her right now. And I literally had to say to one of the organizers of the Atlanta protest, he jumped on, and I was getting ready. I was like, dude, I'm getting ready to make lemonade. I'm not. I'm not.
Mhm.
I won't be there. I'm not coming down. And do I feel any guilt or regret? No, because I'm looking at it and I know how exhausted
Yeah.
it is. One, to try to control your narrative, and that's what I was as 20 years as a justice blogger,
Mhm.
helping activists control the narrative.
Yeah.
And and I didn't just walk away. I trained some folk.
Yeah.
Okay, I trained some folk before I got to this point in my life where I needed to come away from that. Because sometimes you just gotta stop and live. And it is, and I could talk to you about these advocates and activists. It is a constant thing, and
Mhm.
it's forever. I myself wanted to, in all the work that I did, I wanted to work myself out of being necessary. I
Mhm.
wanted to work my, I wanted to be able to trust that there are now systems in place where what I brought to the table was no longer needed.
Right.
Um, and that was my hope. That was my hope. But then here we are on a Sunday, and I call it Pundit Sunday,
Mhm.
where everybody's looking at everything that happened in there, and something's just not right. And what I
Mhm.
kept hearing all morning, Angela, was this thing about worse than us. Even in this protest, from the mayor, Atlanta, let me say Atlanta
Right.
mayor, because
Right.
all mayors. from Atlanta mayor, from the her she seemed to have knighted Killer Mike and Ti, like
Right.
like right, they've
Yes.
been knighted as
Right.
part of her administration, and some others and so forth. But listening to them, I woke up this morning feeling like there are some people who seem to be okay with this thing because it identifies again people who are worse than us, and I want to know why it is that this is a thing in America that we need to have. And you articulated it, put it in language, brought the research, the data, and all that to it. So I'm going to ask you to pick
Yeah.
up because you think, well, Yolanda, that is something called internal, and take it, Angela.
Right. So, and we're talking about internal social division, right? So where you take a group and you internally divide it, right? A group that otherwise would be
Mm.
united, and it's a divide and conquer technique, right? And and again, I went through all literally. I'm like, there's this angle, there's this angle, there's this angle, but I think that we'll start with this divide and conquer approach, which is if you keep people with a shared interest divided by some other sort of social factor, race, class, gender, right? Then they lose their collective power. There's also
Mm-hmm.
the ego piece of it, which is it's a way to make yourself feel better, right? And so it's a way to say, well, at least we're not like them, right? And I shared a little quick story about this is old, this is ancient, right? But just to go back to a story my mom told that her grandmother would say, or her mother would say, and there was another family with the same family name, and the name was Yance, and my mom would say, well, what about those Yances? And I'm like, well, we're not like those Yances, right? And there was a little area
Mm-hmm.
next to them down a dirt road, and they're like, well, we don't go down there, called Shawtown. This is in our family. We was talking about the language is Shawtown, as if you're talking about Shawtown. Oh, we don't go down to Shawtown because we're not like them, like like, and like literally. As a person, I didn't grow up there. I came and visited. These were country people. This was one country road versus another. Like, y'all the same country, as in country people, right? But they had these
Right, right.
divisions, right? So that one group could feel better than, right? So it's also a way to feel better,
Mm.
to make yourself feel better. At least we're not as bad as, and it gives you an excuse for what you're not doing right. So thinking about what you're talking about, the press conference with Keisha Lance Bottoms, you can see two of those, and with what Killer Mike said, right? It's like, yeah, we got problems, but we're not as bad as everybody else, right? And I thought that's
Mm-hmm.
so, and I think that there was a shock. You could really see that shock on the faces of the mayor, of the police
Everybody.
chief,
Mm-hmm.
of like, we're
Mm-hmm.
not, we're better than these other cities. We're not supposed to have violent
Minneapolis,
protests.
right.
And it's like and literally they're like, we know how
Exactly.
to protest. We know how to protest, and we know how to do peaceful protests, and we're better than them. And it's like, and don't do what other cities are doing, because we're, they're worse than us. And it's not to say,
We're different.
right, we're
Yeah.
different. And it's not to
Worse than us.
say that the
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta Police Department is not, in fact, better than the Minneapolis Police Department.
At all.
APD is
Right.
60% Black. That's a different dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's historically had a Black
Mm-hmm.
chief of police. Now we have a white chief of police, female. We've had two female chiefs of police. I'm not a police apologist, but it's a different dynamic. So there is a different dynamic, but there's still police, right? And there is still the
Mm-hmm.
structure of police, right? It's an institutional structure.
And there's also the system and the cases that this police chief inherited. I was really
Yep.
shocked that Keisha Lance Bottoms did not choose a different police chief.
Yeah.
Because I mean that's something that happens. She stayed with a lot of the old regime,
Yep.
which is fine. Um, and like I said, I've grown up in Atlanta. If you're from Atlanta, and that was another thing. It's like, well, most of us, one thing about Atlanta is like people would say, well, a lot of us are still from here, and we know the history of the city. And yes, it's nothing to us to have a female mayor. It's
Mm-hmm.
nothing else. I mean, when I was a young woman, a young teenager growing up in this city, we had a female mayor, we had a
Mm-hmm.
female police chief, we had a female fire chief at
Mm-hmm.
times, I think. So female leadership in Atlanta has the moniker all over the world. It's a city run by women, whether
Right.
we're in these positions or not. We're known as, hey, women run things or run a good part of this. And speaking of women, let me just say hello. And Michelle is watching, so I want to
Oh,
say
hi,
hello to her.
Michelle.
And you guys, if
I'm
you
not.
leave a comment, we can put your name on the screen. But it was that, and I think all the other cities that jumped off Friday night and Saturday night, all of them seem to have that worse than us. Minneapolis is worse than us.
Mm-hmm.
They have a most recent cases, but Atlanta too has its own
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I mean, we're Ahmad, even though that's not inside Atlanta, it's outside Atlanta. But
Mm-hmm.
there are. Let me just shout out a classmate of mine, Jimmy Axon. Is there's a family that from my neighborhood is trying to get the mayor to address their loss of a family member by police. So we have our own cases,
Mm-hmm.
but people make you downplay stuff because they try to come with this worse than us. And
Yep.
I love how there's a lot going on in the world, and Angela and I can find a way to discuss this because I want to bring this home. I want to put it in your kitchen. I want to put it in your home. Because even when the mayor came back the next day and said, who are you honoring walking down the street with the Gucci? Well, we have a class of people whom for every day get to walk around with their
Mm-hmm.
Gucci. So let's deal with the fact and the mindset. And if you watch any of the videos, any of the live streams of the people who were out looting, if you listen to some of the conversation that was going on, like I was really drawn into the stark difference in the conversation. And I'm watching one of the videos, but I'm listening because there's a lot of talk. Because I'm a live streamer, so I'm real cognizant about all the sound going on around, right? And I'm listening to these people and how they were salivating on being able to go into these structures and
Mm-hmm.
get these things for which there is a class of people who enjoys those things on the regular,
Yeah.
right? And I'm dealing with the psychology
Yes.
of them, and I don't want to call them looters because there was really something clinical to this
Mm-hmm.
that in a minute that building is going to be breached and I'm going to be able to go in there and get those status symbols, right? Going into the and I know, don't feel like I'm not making any excuses for anybody. Hello to Isabel that came on as well.
Hi,
and,
Isabel.
and guys, we've got to bring everybody on one weekend. We get our technology and get this thing worked out.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I'm listening because one, these are young people, and whether you want to call them young people who have, I'm like, first of all, I did the human thing to disassociate myself. Like
Mm-hmm.
I would never be out there. No one, not one of mine would be out there. But at the same time, I'm listening as to why these individuals want to get inside this building so bad to get those status symbols. You're not going to tell me. I mean, the mayor, when she was running for office, people were upset that she had a second residence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it? Didn't they come out having a second residence, right?
Mm-hmm.
You work hard for those things. I think, and that was the answer. Is like, well, people work hard for these things. People were talking about Biden and Bernie Sanders. Having all Bernie. Remember, Bernie got in trouble about mentioning his second or third home or this, that, and the other, right? And yet we are upset that people who can't obtain those things, and you also alluded to this too, that the worse than us ideology exists. We try to say these people made some wrong decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things that you said there.
Yes.
But
and
yeah,
and
go ahead and
and let me let me
talk
let
about
me
that for a little
interject
bit.
here. Some of this also worse than, it depends on who's saying it, right? When an authority figure says, uses that, it's worse
Worse
over
than,
there,
better than, yeah.
right? And I said,
Mm-hmm.
when we were kids, it's like there's, eat your vegetables because there's starving children in China, right? It's to diminish your
Mm-hmm.
experience. You ought to be grateful for what you have because there's someone who has it worse than you. And this is an old
Mm-hmm.
school, this is an old school technique that is used in families, in organizations, in governments, is to diminish the experience in pain of individuals who are
Mhm.
expressing a desire. So it's like, well,
Right.
you ought to be grateful for what you have, rather than saying it's okay to want more, right? Or it's okay to
Mhm.
note to say I'm seeing something here that is unequal or unfair. So when you look at those,
Mhm.
you look at those young people particularly that were going in, like you say, and they were salivating for Gucci, they are responding to being told, well, you ought to be grateful that you have shoes, right? You ought to be grateful that you have clothes and not worry about having Gucci, right? But they're being
Mhm.
fed a message that this is the marker of success. And so, Trevor Noah, we both have, I think, shared about Trevor Noah's video,
Mhm.
which is fantastic. Find that. Go. It's on my Facebook and Twitter. Yolanda has referenced it on Twitter, of talking about the failure of the social contract, right? That societies exist because we basically all agree to the rules, right? Otherwise, there's just
Mhm.
chaos. And so, what happens? He pointed out what happens when certain parts of a society feel like the social contract doesn't apply to them. It's being ripped up in front of them. They don't. The same rules don't apply to them. So, to your point, it's like work hard, get famous, get
Mhm.
a good job, you can have the Gucci. But if you
Right.
feel like the system is entirely stacked against you, there is a point where you finally say, why shouldn't I just go take it? And because everything's being taken from me. Now that, and so to understand that it's not just you should be glad that it's better than over there. It's like we want it to be better
Mhm.
everywhere, right? And it's like it's good. And I will give Killer Mike credit that he did not just say Atlanta's fine, right? Is that he did say,
Right.
he said, yeah, we got problems, we got issues, but and that's fine. That's fine to say it that way, but it
Mhm.
needs to be we're going to work on our issues too, and not be surprised that there may be something here,
Mhm.
right? So whenever you're saying, oh, we're surprised it's happening here, to understand that people are responding to not even just to what's local in the moment, like you say, to a history. Atlanta has a history,
Right.
Georgia has a history, but the country has a history. People are responding, they say, to things that have happened nationwide, to things that have
Mhm.
happened over years, to things that have happened over decades. It's again, Trevor Noah talked about dominoes, and you, Yolanda, said, well, where do we go back to the first domino? My God, bet you know what's my favorite number? 1619. I mean, how far do we go back? 1500s, 1492,
Mhm.
right? We can trace
Mhm.
those dominoes back, right? But so we're seeing more than just the people protesting it. I was a little surprised that of the reaction, although I think our female leaders handled themselves very well, was that they would be
Mhm.
surprised that things would get ugly, because people are protesting George Floyd's death. They are protesting police brutality nationwide. And so to say, well, we've
Mhm.
not killed anybody here lately, and Atlanta doesn't, it's just, our police have been pretty okay. Why are you
Right.
guys mad?
Right.
Right? It's like, this is not what this is about. Right? And so I do
Mhm.
think that,
Mhm.
like you say, but this worse than, and I thought that was a very good
Worse than,
observation on your
yeah.
point. I didn't say that to begin with, is a control mechanism. It's a way to diminish experience, and it's a way to comfort yourself when you're dissatisfied, and it keeps people from taking action, keeps people from taking
Which is what
positive
they were
action.
looking for, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
It's what they were looking for when they had, I keep asking myself, when the mayor and the police chief went inside to do that press conference, like, did they say, okay, well, after we a couple of hours after we do this, it's gonna die
mhm.
down. We're
Yeah.
gonna go and give a stern message, and we're gonna have a quiet night.
Mhm.
Like I really wanted, somebody said, if you do this, that, we're talking about dominoes, right?
Yeah.
Because the object, and one of the things I said on going live yesterday, I said, well, whenever you see dominoes falling, you never look to the end to see where it's going. You follow it, but
Right,
you
you're
always
following.
look to the beginning to see where it came from, right?
Right.
Where'd that come from? Because you hear it before you see it, and you
Mhm.
realize something's coming and you spend all of your time trying to figure out where it's coming from, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to wait, what's in the way? Where could it go from here? We don't immediately start to dig a trench so it stops right there. We don't immediately reach in and pull out a couple of those dominoes so that the effect will stop right there. We
Right.
just don't do that. And I need to know, why is it we don't do that? Because we know what? We're right here. We're right here. There's somebody, like you said, down the road that's worse than us. Downstream, when you think about the floods and the rains and all that, why is it that we, is it human nature? Is it programming of
Mm-hmm.
humans? Is it societal that no matter what happens to us, we always look to um, something being worse? And I think what makes us different as leading women is that, one, you and I have had some experiences, and we decided, okay, we got to stop these dominoes. So we come together
Yeah.
on Wednesdays and Sundays. It's like, hey, listen, let's figure out, because we don't want anybody to have the experiences that we've had. And so we said, well, let's figure out how to stop these dominoes. And there's obviously not enough, or there may be enough, and they don't have a vehicle, they don't have a lens. I saw some stuff like, I looked to Ava, like, oh, what's Ava tweeting about? And I
Mm-hmm.
saw, and I'm always interested when I see certain things. I know it's Ava, certain things get by Ava, certain
Mm-hmm.
things get by other leading women,
Mm-hmm.
and we end up talking about Tracy in the movie. Michelle Obama, certain
Mm-hmm.
things got by. We went to see her in the thing. Certain things went by, and there were certain things that she stopped dead on. Like, wait,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, let's go back. You know, we see that all the time with leading women. So again, where does this worse than us come from? Because we've all been fed it. We've all been fed it to some degree. And I used to say all the time, it could be worse. My mother said, don't say that anymore, because it really could. But
Well, yeah,
worse than us.
it's, and like I say,
Go
it's
ahead.
ancient. It's ancient. You can look at ancient societies have proverbs and that are basically like, at least we're not them. At least we're better than.
Hmm.
And it's the us versus
Hmm.
them. It's, we've talked about that,
Do you think? Do you think that that's going to be the downfall of these protests? I saw a map that had, the majority of the cities that had a protest, but simply because of that, worse than us. Minneapolis, worse than us.
Mm-hmm.
Ferguson was worse than,
Yeah.
Ferguson was worse than NOLA, which has Gina 6. Because in all of these cases, in some, they some settle, some go civil as opposed to criminal, and all these different things. Do you think come Monday, when it's time to look at this, because somebody has to stop and look at the movie and see where the needle went? Um, First of all, everybody's got to go to their government and figure out where to get money to rebuild. And the first thing they're going to do, and they're going to say, well, we had it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta just had some broken glass. They didn't have the fires. And,
Mm-hmm.
and Minneapolis had the fires, and others, oh, well, some cities were able to bring in their guard units and get people off the street and their curfews and things like that. So even tomorrow morning, as people, um, some people aren't going to be able to go to work tomorrow because they're going to find out, wait, you had it worse than them. Right now everybody's chilling on the weekend, and I don't know that they're chilling, but we really don't know
Mm-hmm.
the impact, because these things did happen inside the metropolitan areas, and people won't experience those until they go back to work. But do you think that the protest, um, is going to, we talk about diminish, is it going to be diminished simply because the way it was, in as limited as it could be organized, because some were organized and some were just kind of in
Mm-hmm.
response to,
Well,
what's good.
what I see
Go ahead.
happening right now, which is
Mm-hmm.
dizzying to me, being particularly on Twitter, and I have to pull back and take breaks uh, pretty
Mm-hmm.
regularly, and I follow some pretty good people, and I try to find good reporters on the ground, good organizers, people who are on the ground. And I think you were having this
Mm-hmm.
conversation. I saw this somewhere else too, that the news media can't keep up. They can't be everywhere. And so they really are using the sort of citizen journalists that are out. And I'm like, can we
Mm-hmm.
start thinking along
Mm-hmm.
in those terms of people who are out filming, right? Because this, talk about the revolution will be televised. The revolution will be social
Mhm. Mhm.
mediaized, right? And so
Right. Right.
we're going to have tons of archival footage of what happened, right? And
Mhm.
which is actually amazing to think about, the ability to be able to challenge the narrative. You talk about controlling the narrative. If somebody's trying to take over a narrative, to be able to say, no, we have, or yes, we have the footage that supports this. No, we have the footage that does this, that
Mhm.
opposes.
Mhm.
But what I'm noticing, to your point about worse than, but I've started thinking about internal social divisions. There is so much attempt. There's so many attempts to divide, push, pit against. And so, you talk about this. We have, let's go back, god, it feels like going back a year. Let's go back to Minneapolis, where you find out that the auto zone, that fire, that vandalism was started by a white protester who apparently was an undercover cop, right? It appears to be a
Mhm. Mhm.
plant that was triggering violence, right? So then we move into this
Mhm.
whole thing that it's like, oh, all this violence is being caused by white people. It's the Antifa, it's the anarchist. I happen to know,
Mhm.
I have a sibling who was very much involved, um, in the anti-death penalty movement, and he was like always at the end, the anarchists would show up and start breaking shit, right? Pardon my French.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so we have this. So now now these white people are causing the problem, and then it's like, no, they're not. It's these people from out of state. People are coming from out of state. They're causing the problem. Oh, so I mean, you start to see a divide. Not that this is not true. I don't want to suggest, because you can look and see. Yeah, but it's
Division.
divisions, divisions,
Division.
divisions.
Yeah.
What you talk about controlling the
Right.
narrative. If that narrative is not properly created, then you have a
Mhm.
message. How can this? It's like, why would you send white undercover officers or white infiltrators to create chaos in a Black Lives Matter protest? Well, but why wouldn't you just? Could you not? In the past, people would get hired, right?
Mhm.
Not
Mhm.
maybe
Mhm.
there's, but why would you do it? And knowing that everything can be filmed, because then you can promote the narrative that the white people who are there aren't really there to protest, and so the white people watching can be
Who
told,
are there to protest?
the
Yeah.
white people watching can be told, oh, those white people really aren't there because they care about this. They're there to cause trouble. And it lets white people think, oh, other white people really aren't concerned, right? Now, I'm not saying that that's not
Mhm.
true, but you can
So it's
take
okay
that.
that I'm not concerned because yeah.
Right. So you can take that
Whew, that's
narrative,
deep.
right? You can take that narrative. It's the
Mhm.
same thing when you say, look at these, and I mean it's particularly young people, but I'm sure there's old people too. Look at these people looting, right? Look at these looters, and let's see
Mhm.
those, everybody who's out there is just out there to cause destruction. Again, it's dividing, right? So you have a division. It's like, are you young? Are you here? Are you here in the evening? Are you here at night? Well, you must be here to cause trouble. Instead of saying young people want to be involved, maybe you're in a situation you can only come out in the evening. So there, I just see this like minimize, trying this attempt to minimize. So to your
Yeah.
point, this attempt to minimize what's happening, rather than being able to say all of this is part of a bigger issue, all of this is part of a bigger picture, and that is a, about a
Mm.
deep rooted problem in Western society, in human culture, that we keep trying to pull
Mhm.
up and pull up and pull up. And we get a little, and then we take a break, and we get a little, and we take a break. And to your point, it's exhausting, and people get tired, and they
Mhm.
take a break, and then they come back. So the point being is that I am hoping that we're going to use this moment to move forward. Will we? Giant question mark. I don't know. And
Yeah.
there is a,
Because when you come down, because somebody has to look at this, and one of the things I tweeted yesterday when we were watching the footage and we're listening to the very heavily narrated
mm-hmm,
footage. The reporters felt like they had to talk the entire time, and I kept saying, I'm leery when a person doesn't allude to any kind of data, any kind of
mm-hmm,
stats, any kind of history, and the questions they were asking back and forth, and I'm like, man, you should be able to say, as predictable as these things are, because it was quite predictable, right? You would think that somebody would be in place feeding in this kind of information.
Mm-hmm.
If this thing goes past this hour or this mile or this that, here's what's going. I need to know, like, here's in real time data. I need to know, here's what's going to happen, because some of us are like, okay, well, if it gets dark, if it's rain,
Mm-hmm.
if the temperature is this,
Mm-hmm.
those are things that play into a protest. It's like, if it's clear weather all weekend,
Mm-hmm.
the long hot summer, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, May in America is protest month.
Yeah.
Okay, May since 1970 and beyond. Of course, and I always call it the last white riot was May 1970, and it was the most unifying marches and protests. There were riots, but then riots happened after the march and after the protest. America was in the process of uniting over the war against Nixon and so forth. And then we went on Nixon, Watergate, and then we had Ford, and then after that came Jimmy Carter and so forth.
Yeah.
I open that can of worms today,
Well,
so that's
yeah.
another depressive state that I might have to go through. But when I'm watching the footage last night and nobody is able to say, okay, well, if this thing, like, there was a curfew we need a 9 o'clock curfew on
Yep.
Saturday. So you knew, okay, we're going to shut it down. But it's like, and going back to the women leading, they led with a little bit of caring, want to let the people speak,
Mm-hmm.
want to let people be heard, want
Mm-hmm.
to let the protesters, even want to let them stroll from one place to the next, as long
Mm-hmm.
as they keep moving. And again, Atlanta not wanting to be worse than the rest.
Right.
Here's how we're gonna handle it. As long as they don't get on the highway, it's okay
Mm-hmm.
if they go and disadvantage this neighborhood or these people, or let's. But see, you got to keep in mind, Atlanta, downtown Atlanta now is largely residential.
Mm-hmm.
There were people that had to be evacuated because some of the areas that were destroyed is now in those new live work play, all that commercial business on the bottom, residential on the top. Those people, a lot of those people had to be evacuated, because what we have, what if you set fire to that commercial building
Yeah.
downstairs and there's thousands of people living
Yeah.
above that in that same structure? That could have been catastrophic. But you've got these things going on with people by whom there's no leadership. Nobody's leading this thing. There's no real structure to it,
Mm-mm.
because that the leadership went home at 5 o'clock,
Right.
right? So now you've got young people being led, and even when areas cleared out, and the news reporters and the cameras like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, where did everybody go? Well, they all got a tweet or a social media or a TikTok or something to go elsewhere, to be
Mm-hmm.
elsewhere. There was I still don't know who he is, but one I think he out just say athlete. He plays for one of the teams in Boston and lives in Atlanta. Drove drove from Boston after the first night of Atlanta. Drove to Atlanta, tweeted out, "Hey, listen, we're gonna do this protest right.
Mm-hmm.
Meet me." Tweet now. Meet me at MLK. In the MLK corridor. We're gonna step off at 7 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in his 15-hour drive, he was able to organize an entire
Mm-hmm.
protest.
Yep.
Not gathering with people who were over here doing this and over here doing. In his fifth, like, I'm frustrated. Something is going on in my hometown, because I was like, wait, why would he drive to Atlanta past
Mm-hmm.
Minneapolis?
Right. Right.
They said, well, I'm like, everybody was tweeting me back, like, well, he's from here. I'm like, oh, okay. So he saw his hometown. I wish I could figure out. I don't want to touch any of my devices, but he saw his hometown looking worse like everybody else, and decided, I'm going to go to Atlanta. I know the history, like I said, the history of the
Mm-hmm.
city. Meet me at the MLK. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
step off. And I think he and a couple of hundred,
Yeah.
okay, stepped off literally at 7 o'clock, went and did their march, and was back before curfew. They were back about, I think, about 8:30, disbanded and heading out of town. So So you can galvanize. And I
Yes.
looked, I think he had 340 some thousand followers on Twitter. That's who got that message to meet him to go and just do this. I don't know where they marched to, but they went down Auburn Avenue to something and came back. I guess because I when I checked back, they were somebody was interviewing not any of the media. Well, there was a media outlet out, and let me not say not media because there was. It's how I found out about it. I have a timeline I have search on my Twitter, a search window
Mm-hmm.
where I'm following certain producers and whatnot. And I saw that one was going over to cover that. And interesting enough, they were going over to cover that, but it wasn't like everybody like, oh, let's move
Mm-hmm.
with the
Right.
positive march. And so she was literally the sole voice of, hey, here's what's going on over here. But
Right.
simply because I have her saved with these other
Mm-hmm.
um on the street producers and so forth, I got a chance to see it. But think about that.
Well,
15-hour drive,
yeah.
galvanize all those people to march. Go
Well,
ahead.
I want us to think about this. Today is the 99th anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre. So, talk about
May,
May
again,
being riot
May
month.
in America.
So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
99 years since the Tulsa Massacre. Only this year has the state of Oklahoma dictated that in the next school year, which basically 100
Mm-hmm.
years after that massacre, that this will be taught in
Right.
Oklahoma schools as part of state history. So when we look at what's happening, we are looking at we're 100 years behind in dealing.
But didn't we just recently lose either there's one survivor left or
Yeah.
we just recently lost the last survivor? I want to read a comment from Michelle. She said, had to find the name. Let me put it on the screen. I don't know if all of it will go on the screen, but had to find the name, but I got a huge history lesson on the history of Atlanta and what the protests here in Atlanta are really about. You guys probably know most of the information he gives, but the way he presents the information makes it very clear. His name is Desmond Hardy. Desmond
Mm.
Hardy. Michelle is talking about. I'm going to go and find that. I may actually know who that is. It sounds familiar. But go ahead, Angela. Finish up
Yes.
what you were
So
saying.
it's again, it's a mistake to say that what's happening right now is because of
Mm-hmm.
something that happened
Mm-hmm.
in the moment. And I'm like, when it
Mm-hmm.
takes 100 years to get recognition for a horrible slaughter, right? And
Right.
the only reason that got
Mm-hmm.
attention was because a white man decided to make a show on HBO that had it in there. And thankfully, Damon
Mm-hmm.
Lindelof,
And that was the show,
hat tip, The
The
Watchmen.
Watchmen.
Yeah, hat tip to
Mm-hmm.
him. That's a person who used their white privilege. He brought in people of
Mm-hmm.
color, black women, black men to write that story and direct those episodes. And he used that
Mm-hmm.
platform to be able to tell that story, a story that black people have been
Mm-hmm.
telling,
And
you know.
remember when that episode aired,
Oh,
it went across the world. It went across the world. Like people were like, "Whoa, this really like it was after it was confirmation."
yeah,
It was, and people don't realize it. What happened with in Tulsa? When you talk about something being systemic, when you talk
mm-hmm.
about a syndrome, it created a syndrome in black businesses. Think about
Yes,
last night or yesterday, everybody was talking about marking their businesses black owned business. You know, again, worse than us. You know, destroy the block, but this is a black owned business. Um, there is something within black entrepreneurs to this day about letting themselves be known as the face behind their
yeah,
business,
yeah,
you know, not wanting to put their face on the business because and people, you know, some people realize it and some people don't realize how much we talk about a syndrome, how some of this stuff ends up in your DNA.
yes,
People who are passing these fears on, not even knowing exactly where they come from, but it comes from the fact that when you talk with the app that black communities literally surpassed the American dream. For us, there was
Mm-hmm.
nothing, there was no such thing as an American dream, but
Mm-hmm.
there was always a brilliance, there was always a will,
Mm-hmm.
there was always a will to survive, there was always resilience. Okay, we just didn't box it up in something called the American dream. And so, even when I talk to entrepreneurs, and I consult with entrepreneurs every single day about publicity and marketing and creating buzz, and in every scenario, in every single solitary individual that I talk to about creating buzz for their business, there is a syndrome that comes out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. If somebody knows that I am this successful in my business,
Mm-hmm.
something is going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, people think that that is they're introvert, or they have self-hate or doubt or fear, just fear or anxiety. No. And this whole thing about false evidence appearing real, it's factual evidence appearing real.
Mm-hmm.
You are afraid to be the
Yeah.
face of your business because there is a history of your people being assassinated for being successful,
Can you say
for
that
for
again?
creating a
Yeah.
product that
Yep.
makes money in your community. That thing is real.
Say that again.
It's
It's not false.
absolutely real.
It's not
It's not
false.
false. It's factual.
It's factual. And there
It's
is a
not
fear
false.
based on
It's
fact.
factual.
Yep. Yep.
There is a fear based
Yep.
on fact that,
Yep.
and let me tell you, Black Enterprise, there's a magazine, if anybody doesn't know about it, there's a magazine called Black Enterprise Magazine, for whom every month they need somebody to put on the cover, for whom every month they need to fill page after page after page after page. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you, as a black blogger, okay, and I didn't even start out trying to be a black blogger, and I wasn't even trying to happen to be black. Okay. I was just trying to blog about Atlanta, which, as you know, is largely black. But I remember I thought I had a problem trying to get people to let me
Mm-hmm.
do stories on them. Well, come to find out, this major magazine, whom they just recently lost their founding editor, was Earl Graves, right? It just recently passed. That they have a hard time putting people on the cover. That there is an underlying current of, well, I don't know if I want to be known as, that, like I don't want only black customers. And let me tell you, and they have a national conference, they have a secondary and all these auxiliary conferences and stuff, and it's a conversation. It is literally a
Oh,
conversation as
look,
to whether or not people should attend or something. Go ahead, and the same thing with
I was
women.
going
Go
to
ahead.
say, working with black business owners, I have encountered the same exact thing. Is that I've had these discussions. Should I put my face? Should I have images of black, like in stock images? Should I just have white stock images? Should I have mostly white stock images? Because I want to have white customers as well, with this thought that if I make this look black, like a black business.
Hmm.
A friend of mine just sent me something right as we were getting on the air, and who's a mommy
Hmm.
blogger, and she sent me from another mommy blogger who has been doing a sponsorship. And sponsorship is with Asper cream, right? How, you know
Right.
pain relief
Well,
cream. And
I got kicked out of the mommy bloggers. So
well,
go ahead.
but anyway, so it's a black family, and so it's a woman and her
Hmm.
children, and she's taking a picture. So the idea is she's taking, I don't know if they're doing a selfie or if she's taking a picture and the kids are waving, right? And it's very sweet, and it's like,
Hmm.
enjoy your family, don't be in pain, ask for cream. The comments on that are
Oh, I can imagine.
no. And I was like, trigger warning, don't go look, right? And so the mom, the woman who was featured there with the picture, she says, just a heads up to my fellow black mommy bloggers, to see what happens when they use my content, right? To see what happens when a national advertiser uses my content. And so it's this idea
Mm.
that if that is what's happening to a national brand when they put one black family on it, right? It's certainly, to your point, this is not a false fear.
Yeah,
This is not fear as in
it's
false. It
factual.
is not. I mean, this is
Hmm.
happening. It's
Hmm.
happening. That happened today. That's happening right now. So I
Hmm.
absolutely have seen it, and it's beyond despicable. But let's go back. I know I was trying to pull up Desmond Henry that Michelle was mentioning because
Desmond Hardy.
Desmond Hardy, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
that that's probably why I didn't find it. That Atlanta has a history, a recent
Mm-hmm.
history, like you say, of police issues. I mean, we've you know. I say I don't know what Desmond Hardy said, but well, the whole redlining issue, that was something that you were very much in part of in your
Oh, you know
activism.
what? We have to get Elizabeth Omalami on. She was, you know, I love my sister Elizabeth Omalami. And she's part of the Hosea. She's Hosea Williams' daughter
Mm-hmm.
and part of the Hosea Williams Foundation. And they interviewed her because there were young people again who were just exhausted because they were trying to mobilize in these protests and not understanding how they were one infiltrated and not understanding how the violence happened, because that's not what they saw from their
Mm-hmm.
grandparents generation of mobilizing and their parents generation, the aunties generation, my generation of mobilizing. The violence was just not a thing. And so they asked Elizabeth Omalami, well, what happened? And one of the things she said was, we didn't pass it on. We didn't train our children. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
teach our young people that this is really how this thing got done. And a lot of people really don't know how this stuff really got done. They know, okay, you need a great oratory. You need to,
Mm-hmm.
you need to be able to articulate this. You need to gather. You need to march. You need to, get the miles in and all those kind of things. But they don't know about all the things that went on kind of behind the scenes and who really founded and funded and all these different things and how long was the work. Even
Mm-hmm.
though you can use tools like social media to galvanize people within 15 hours or
Mm-hmm.
hours for that matter. Remember, because if you think about it, the Women's March, the Women's March was something that somebody jumped online, created an event, and there's
Mm-hmm.
a event going to happen on June 14th. Everybody's going to flood social media with Obama content on Trump's birthday, you know. And a lot of people probably like, oh, I just heard that for the
I
first
love
time, but I saw it. It's going on TikTok.
I
There's a guy.
I love
They're passing
petty
around.
activism. I
Right, petty activism.
love
So
petty
that's
activism.
something to look forward to in June.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, change your profile pic if that's what you do, or
Yeah.
make sure that you just flood social media with content and great speeches and just the coolness of Barack Obama on Trump's birthday. He's probably like, I don't even want a birthday at this
I
point.
tell you, that's
But
yeah.
one of the things she said, that is that think about it, worse than us. We talk about generations, generations. There's a video going viral of a young man who having talked with
I was
someone
just thinking
from,
about that.
sounds like he's
Yep.
the boomer or the silent generation,
Yes.
and people trying to drill into him that they had it worse. What, and he's like, and it was a conversation of who had it worse.
Mm-hmm.
You had your social societal ills, we have ours. Try living in this day. There was a person, I was in a comment in a group, and the man came in and he's like, listen, you young person, and I told him, you might want to just, you're coming at me with all this stuff that I should naturally believe. You might want to just go and check my profile. So one, you can speak to me on my terms, and just a little knowledge of where I have been, because maybe I've already been where you're trying to tell me I'm going to go,
Yeah.
you know. And then when he took the time, he had to admit he had taken the time. Coming at me with all this stuff, had not taken the time to go look at my profile, then came back and said, my sister, I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, now we can be on the same plane when we have this discussion. You know where I'm coming from. Because I'd already taken the liberty of going to his profile. And I understand
Mm-hmm.
he was an older gentleman. He's tied to some of the histories of
Mm-hmm.
this city. But you, without even trying to get to know who I was coming at me based on something you're seeing people who look like they might be in my age group
Yeah.
that are out there doing. First of all, go and find out. Arm yourself with information. Now is not the time to say you don't know. If you don't know how to mobilize, you don't know what a protest should look like. You don't know what an infiltrator does look like. Now is not the time to be out here saying I don't know. I want to touch on something, and then I will go back around. One thing that concerned me, a number of people were saying that bricks were delivered. They
Mhm.
literally saw pallets of bricks placed throughout inner cities. And I'm using the word inner city in inner metropolitan areas, right?
Mhm.
Here in Atlanta, there were a couple of intersections where bricks was just neatly piled up, okay, as if we are getting ready to get some new cobblestone streets.
Right, right.
All right. I don't know that to be the case. Okay. But here, as well as in Houston and a couple other places, we saw this conversation about because somebody literally said, "Where'd the rocks come from?" Which was what people were breaking the windows with, you know. And it's like, is somebody going to go back and really? Who's going to go back and really look at the evidence and investigate the evidence? And I think that's the thing when you talk about one city has it worse than the other.
Mhm.
It's simply because one city has it better than the other. Let's get to that side of things. We Atlanta may have it better than a Minneapolis, or some of these other cities. We may have a better structure. We are more cognizant here about some of the systems of oppression or other systems. So we may have it a little bit better. We may, recoup come back from some of the things that happened. We weren't may have been able to put some things in play that other cities weren't. Some cities could be, still under siege right now. We don't know unless we go to various mediums and find out. But has what out of this, and I'm going to ask you because I don't want to leave everybody thinking that everything's just bad. How and where do we look to where better than has worked because those who have it better than give back,
Yeah.
lean back? The gentleman who obviously doesn't have to even have a thing to do with Atlanta, driving
Yeah.
15 hours to come and organize young people because he has that platform. I watched Blackball, which talked about the LA Clippers surviving Donald Sterling. That's on the Quibi app, and I know ain't nobody watching Quibi but me, but it's on
You
the
and
Quibi app.
yeah,
Give
you and
us
Jeffrey
some
Katzenberg.
examples.
Well, let's
Right. Give me some examples where those who do have it better than, for whom better than is not enough.
yes.
I'll put it that
And
way.
I kept thinking about a statement that was said to me. One of the most powerful things anyone ever probably ever said to me was, "Who taught you to be satisfied with crumbs?" And when you're talking
Ooh.
about worse than, better than, oftentimes when you're
Mm-hmm.
told, well, at least you're not as bad as whatever, you're being convinced that you should be satisfied with crumbs, right? And so I say it's progress that people are like, I'm not going to be satisfied with crumbs, even though
Mm-hmm.
we have it better. It's not where it needs to be. And we're not going to stop just being satisfied with they're not killing us. They maybe, again, it's the abuser. And I
Mm-hmm.
just thought it's the thing women say about sexual abuse. Well, at least I wasn't raped. At
Yes.
least I wasn't killed. Right. And so, and so for years, it's prior to the Me Too movement, it's like, well, okay, it was just, I was just held in a box in the woods against my will for an hour. Right. I wasn't raped. And so for years I was like, oh, I was just, I was 15 and was stupid. And I'm like, no, I was attacked. Right. And, and I never, but again, I was like, well, it could be worse. Right. So we use that to be sad. We're told that so that we can be satisfied. Again, it's diminishing and satisfied with crumbs. But to
Mm-hmm.
go back to let's look and see what's working. I want to reference two things. One thing, that video that you mentioned about the generations, and I saw that too. I saw
Mm-hmm.
a piece of it, and I know we always talk. I like to do the leading women wisdom. I think that this is a leading man wisdom that we can use. Is
Mm-hmm.
when it was. I'm assuming you're thinking about the same thing, and there was a young. Everybody was just yelling, right? But it was the sort of the man in the middle. He was 31. He was talking to someone who was 46, and there was a 16-year-old there, right? And and they're in this back and forth. The two older ones are back and forth, and the one who's in his 40s is telling the 31-year-old, "You young people don't know." And he's like, "Well, I'm 31. I'm almost the same age as you." And then they pull in a young guy, and he's, "How old are you?" 16. And what the 31-year-old said was to the 16-year-old is, "You've got to find a better way." Said, "He's been doing it. I've been doing it. Now you're doing it. We're doing the exact same thing. We're out here protesting the same exact thing." He's like, "5 years ago, I was out here." And he's like, "And I have a 5-year-old son. And how is it going to be different from him?" And it was wrenching, but I thought, there's the wisdom, is we
Mm-hmm.
we've got to do things a different way. And sometimes when we're trying to do something different, it's not pretty, it's not clean.
Mm-hmm.
Mistakes are made, things may be very chaotic as we're moving into a different
Right.
way of doing things. And this is where I want to give credit to Mayor Bottoms and to Chief Shields. I think they tried to do something different, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
same thing with the female police chief down in Dallas. Yeah, I can't think of her name, Renee something. And
Yeah.
where they
Out
went
on
out in
out
the
on the streets.
crowds,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't really see that anywhere. I saw there was a male sheriff in Flint, Michigan, and he joined the march. I thought, there's your next one, right? Is
Yeah.
what if the police
New Jersey police
what if the
officers
police
joined the
join
march.
the
Yeah.
march, right? So it's,
Mm-hmm.
again, but
Mm-hmm.
it's ugly to figure things out as we're going, and to use I feel like an overused analogy for COVID. It's like building the plane in flight. Well, we are building. I don't know what's the slowest moving thing that you can build, but we're
Mm-hmm.
building it. Well, it's creeping along, but we're trying to build it. This sort of shift in power dynamics in our country, and it's messy, but it doesn't mean that there's not progress. And like you said, it doesn't mean that there's not good things. And so, to give a shout out to
Right.
Isabel Mongui, who was on at least earlier, she's got a Facebook page called Love and Innovation in Time of the Rona, right? Where she just posts
Mm-hmm.
positive stories about how people are reaching out to help one another. And she's always coming up with something new and something new. And these are not the stories that get the attention, right? And so it's the same thing with what's going on. There are going to be people who are
Mm-hmm.
figuring out how to do it right. Again, back to Trevor Noah. There's no right way to protest. You're protesting, right? Nobody's going to like it.
Mm-hmm.
But how to be effective, how to move this, how to protect people, but how to make the point. And so, I can't give you a list of people that are doing it right. What you gave was the example, but those stories are out there, right? And you see people, um, you know, you see, I've seen this lines of white protesters getting up in front of the police at the front of the line between the police and the black protesters. That's good. That's an
Mm-hmm.
improvement, right? You see
It goes
people.
it goes back to trying to understand that though.
Yeah.
I'm
Well.
I'm still walking away trying to understand. But you know what? The funny part about it, when I think about that, one of the things I've been trying to learn all my life is, or trying to understand, was John Brown.
Uh-huh.
And it was drilled into me during one of the Denzel movies, where they had this line in this Denzel movie, the one fighting the football movie that Denzel did. And all throughout the movie, everybody kept saying, "Well, I'll be John Brown. Well, I'll be John Brown. I'll be John Brown." And I don't care how much history, how much I go back and study that. It's basically trying to understand. It's about trying to understand white people's involvement in black protests.
Well.
It goes back to Malcolm X. The young lady asking, "What can I do?" And the first time, in the movie or in the book, saying nothing, and then finally, giving into, there are people, regardless of who what race and ethnicity, class and gender that they are, that sometimes we are out here experiencing life the same at the same time. There's a construct that wants to always have us. It's like with COVID-19. When COVID-19 started, people were like, "Wait, are black people immune?" Because they didn't want to include us in the hero
Mm-hmm.
story side of things, right? So it came out, black people are immune. Then all of a sudden now, well, black people are twice as likely. We're
Right.
twice as likely on everything. But I try to remind people, Twice as likely still means that everybody else is likely, but we are oftentimes left
Yeah.
with wondering why it is we are alone in being vocal about a thing, and that's what happens. And here we had a protest. Here this weekend we had a protest where we really weren't alone, but we still don't know how to identify the fact that people are more and more identifying with black people. 'Cause I was like, what in the world is what's going on here? I was in my entire feelings trying to understand the involvement and the amount of involvement of white men in this entire thing. And I'm like, wait a minute, you can't be the police, the killer and the protester. I'm not understanding. So I'm still trying to process
Well,
all of that. And I
and
had to let it out as it came, but
no, and
go ahead.
I think that's very significant. And this is again where there's a lot of debate is what is the role of white people in this, right? But to
Hmm.
say the fact that there are concerned, there are concerned white people. And what? I'm going to go back to Amy Cooper. I use the term Amy Cooper now. Everything I see now, I see that's Amy Cooper. That's an Amy Cooper. That's Amy Cooper with kids.
Okay,
That's
but
Amy Cooper. But
why
and
was
to
his
say, but I'm gonna let me finish my point. So I'm like
yeah, finish your point because
that Amy Cooper story, right? Which is the woman with the dog who called, who
right.
did the he's trying to kill me.
Hmm.
Did demonstrated the
Hmm.
voices of Karen, right? So we
Hmm.
we have that. I think a lot of white people looked at that and were able to have a mirror held up to their faces. Number one,
Yeah.
number two, to say a lot of white people don't like Amy Cooper either, right? They're like,
They
I
don't
know
like Karen.
they don't like
There's a
Karen.
whole there's a whole
Yeah,
area on TikTok of white
yeah.
people calling
And
out Karen.
and I'm going to honor the fact that there's a lot of black actors who say white women should not be calling each other Karens or whatever. But just to the point is that behavior, right? Because guess what? Karen's the white people too, right? And so it's like, now our lives may not be in danger.
Wait a
So
minute, say that again, because I keep trying to tell my folks,
yeah.
Karen does not discriminate.
Oh,
Okay, Karen don't like nobody.
Karen doesn't like
Karen
anybody.
don't like nobody. Right.
No, no. And so Karen will, Karen's the white people too. But again, Karen doesn't, her Karening doesn't threaten my life, right? It makes me hate her, right? And,
Right.
one of the things that I
Y'all
saw,
can see. Y'all can call the police. Y'all can call the police on each
we
other.
call
We
cops on
can't
each
do that.
other. Exactly. Well, we don't. We just,
Right. We can't do that.
we just have mean girl groups called book clubs and drink wine and don't invite her and talk shit about her, right? That's
And
how.
then y'all end up. And then y'all end up
And then that
on
group
talk shows.
and then that group breaks up and this group forms. Oh, it's very high school. But
and which is what you have going on right now with your publishing friends,
exactly, in the
y'all.
publishing. But my point is that I
Y'all
feel
call it
like
publishing, but go ahead.
exactly that I feel like that there's a certain contingency of white people that saw that story and really were able between that and
Yeah.
Ahmaud Arbery to say that
And see, that's where we're gonna miss it though. But that's
yeah.
how it's going to be missed because if you think about that, and again think about the dominoes and how Trevor Noah explained that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she set off a domino effect. She didn't realize, what she was
No.
doing over here, that something was tremendously happening to the black guy over here. But if what she did increased white participation in this weekend's protest
Mm-hmm.
because a number of people saw in the mirror, we're going to miss it. It's going to go over our heads
Yeah.
simply because there was the other side of that domino effect of those who were destructive, who are being called out
Mm-hmm.
about being destructive. So, it's going to cause us, and
Yeah.
again, going back, Amy messed this up because that might have been
Mm-hmm.
um, the catalyst. She might have been the catalyst for a
Yeah.
change, and yet we're going to miss that change simply because there was something else working in concert, or not in concert, but in conflict to what just happened. If there was a shift, we talk about pivots and shifts all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If there were shifts this weekend, we will probably more than anything miss it. And I'll tell you, the guy with the machete, watching the people bring down the guy with the machete, the guy
Mm-hmm.
with the bow and
Bow
arrow,
and arrow. Yeah.
watching people in the protest bring down the guy with the bow and arrow. And a number of things, people breaking in buildings and people stopping them from breaking in buildings. So
Mm-hmm.
we're missing all of that simply because this other thing, because there are something worse than there were some things that happened that was worse than that.
Exactly. And so,
So
you know,
let's how are we
yeah,
on
I
time?
got,
We got
yeah,
about 1 minute to
yeah,
three.
I got to go. But I just want to say, just with this, you know, the white people showing up to the protest, understand they don't know what they're doing. They don't. And I'm sorry. And so, you know, they're going to be,
And I love it. I love it because some of them were like, well, my grandparents, everybody wants to say my grandparents marched with Dr. King, and
yes.
I just felt it. My listen,
Yeah.
um, guys, now is not the time to not
No.
know what you're doing. Now is
No.
not the time to not know what you're doing. The opportunity to learn is
Mm-hmm.
abundantly clear. It's available. Even as I was tweeting, let me tell you, and I tweet fast. I still take time if I'm going to allude to something or mention something. I still take time and just go and try and figure out. Like, oh, wait,
Yeah.
before I say that, let me go and see if it. First of all, let me go and see if it still means what it meant when it started.
Yeah.
Because sometimes things slip on us. You got to fact check. You've got to fact check, and now is the time to be really operating from facts. We've been
Mm-hmm.
here. This planet has been here long
Yes.
enough. We just went back into space again. We just been here long enough that somebody has got some amazing archives, some amazing data, and now it's the time to somebody retweeted me. One of the journalists retweeted because I said, it's time out for because journalists love to do those open-ended questions, like when they're really making a statement, where they frame it like a question. It's
Mm-hmm.
like now is the time to really be putting some facts out there, not just this. Oh, let me see if somebody catches this or catches that
Right.
and challenges me on it. Don't
Right.
be like the president where we got to go fact check everything and challenge us. Stop and don't be like Trump. Stop and just
Yeah.
do quick research. You can research something
Yep.
just that fast. Angela, give us some words of leading women weekly to carry us over to Wednesday.
So I'm gonna harken back to, I said, the young man in the video who said it's it's time to find a new way. So let's be
Mm-hmm.
open to innovation. Let's be open to new ways. Let's not fall into the trap of thinking this is, it's not worked. This isn't working. It hasn't worked. It won't work. No, keep keep bringing innovation. Keep looking. Keep trying, and be prepared
Mm-hmm.
to 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 to
Yeah,
fail and to get
yeah.
back up again. And it's like there is really the failure is if you stop, right? Is if you stop moving. And so we
Mm-hmm.
can't quit
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure this out. And it's okay to, it's this is exhausting. And if you got to take a break, that's
Mm-hmm.
fine, right? But
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
not quit trying. Let's not be satisfied with crumbs.
And one thing, let me tell everybody this, because this is something, like I said, I've covered these things for 20 years. And I only began to cover them for 20 years because I was actually involved in them at another level. The protests happen this weekend. There are going to be meetings with your elected officials. That's going to happen this week. It may even be congressional hearings.
Mm,
And while it was somewhat convenient to get it done on the weekend, those meetings will go empty unless you truly organize. Find the people. You want to know something about the civil rights movement? One of the reasons that a lot of the preachers led everything because they all they had to work was on Sunday. They
mm-hmm,
had time to go to
mm-hmm,
these meetings. As a matter of fact, concerning Black clergy, they meet every Monday morning. There are so many meetings. I'm in Atlanta, so I know that. There's a meeting Monday. There's a meeting Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and it just goes on and on. But those are the ones where they make the decisions, set the
mm-hmm,
policy, write the laws. The well at that gold, wherever you see a gold dome, right under that gold dome is an auditorium where everybody can fill in and watch what's going on down on the
mm-hmm.
floor. It's when you fill that up that they start making different decisions, because you can go out in the streets, but if you don't send somebody to the suites and to under the gold dome, it won't make the impact, the follow through. Excuse me. the follow through won't be there.
Yeah.
And that's where this thing gets lost. All right, guys. Wait a minute. One more comment. Let's find a new way. Isabella is reiterating what you said. Let's find a new way. Keep trying that quote. Angela, yes.
Thank you.
Follow Angela at Angela Stalkup on Twitter. You can
Here's
even
my
just watch
name.
some of the posts
Yeah.
that she
Yeah.
likes.
Have it.
Okay, even if she doesn't retweet them. So please follow her on Twitter is your most active, right? And then of
Yeah.
course your Facebook
Follow me
as
on
well.
Twitter. Yeah.
All
Talk to
right,
me.
and you
Talk
can
to me on
follow me
Facebook.
at
Follow me
Dryer
on
Buzz.
Twitter. Yeah.
You can follow me at Dryer Buzz on Twitter. If you see this video on Facebook, it's going to be linked to share on our pages as well. All right, y'all. It's been a great day. I'm glad we came
Yeah.
together, Angela. All right, y'all. Have a great week. Bye.